Hello history buffs, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving deep into the tumultuous final years of the Great War, a period of dramatic shifts, desperate gambles, and ultimately a world-altering conclusion. By 1917, the war had been raging for 3 grueling years. The trenches on the Western Front were a scar of mud and death, a symbol of a bloody stalemate. But elsewhere, the gears of history were turning faster than ever. Let's first turn our attention to the Middle East. While Europe was locked in trench warfare, the British were making significant gains against the Ottoman Empire. Under General Allenby, they launched a successful campaign, capturing key cities like Baghdad in March, and most symbolically, Jerusalem in December 1917. These victories were a much-needed morale boost for the Allies and began to unravel the fabric of the Central Powers. The efforts of figures like T.E. Lawrence or Lawrence of Arabia in aiding the Arab revolt further destabilized Ottoman control in the region, paving the way for the empire's eventual collapse. But the biggest tremor of 1917 came from the east. Russia, one of the original Allied powers, was imploding. Years of staggering losses, food shortages, and political instability culminated in the February Revolution, which saw Tsar Nicholas II abdicate. The provisional government that followed tried to continue the war effort, but the nation was exhausted. By October, the Bolsheviks, led by Vladimir Lenin, seized power with a simple, powerful promise: peace, land, and bread. True to their word, they immediately sought an armistice with Germany. This led to the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk in March 1918. For Germany, Russia's exit was a monumental victory. It meant the end of the two-front war. Millions of German soldiers could now be redeployed from the Eastern Front to the West for one final decisive push. While one great power was leaving the war, another was just entering. On April 6, 1917, the United States declared war on Germany. Several factors pushed America over the edge from Germany's policy of unrestricted submarine warfare, which had sunk American ships to the infamous Zimmermann telegram, a secret German proposal to Mexico to join the war against the U.S. President Woodrow. Wilson framed America's entry not as a grab for territory, but as a crusade to make the world safe for democracy, though. It would take time for the full might of the American military to mobilize and arrive in Europe. Their entry provided the Allies with a massive psychological boost and access to vast industrial and manpower resources. The tide was beginning to turn. In January 1918, as American troops began to arrive in Europe, President Wilson laid out his vision for a post-war world in a speech to Congress. This vision was encapsulated in his famous 14 points. These points called for an end to secret treaties, freedom of the seas, free trade, and a reduction in armaments. Crucially, they also advocated for self-determination for various national groups and proposed the creation of a General Association of Nations to guarantee political independence and territorial integrity for all states, both great and small. This was the blueprint for the League of Nations, an ambitious plan to prevent future wars. While not all allies were fully on board with every point, Wilson's idealistic vision offered a powerful moral argument for the Allied cause and a glimmer of hope for a lasting peace. With Russia out of the picture and American forces still gathering steam, German high command, led by Generals Hindenburg and Ludendorff, saw a window of opportunity. They knew they had to win the war before the United States could deploy its full strength. The plan was a massive, all-or-nothing gamble. The Spring Offensive, codenamed Operation Michael. Beginning on March 21, 1918, the Germans unleashed a furious assault on the Western Front. Using new stormtrooper tactismal, elite units bypassing strong points to create chaos in the rear, they shattered the British lines. For the first time in years, the front was no longer static. The Germans advanced dozens of miles, the greatest gains seen since 1914. Paris itself was once again under threat, bombarded by the massive Paris gun. A wave of panic swept through the Allied capitals. It seemed Germany might just snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. Above the mud and chaos of the trenches, a different kind of war was being fought in the skies. Aerial warfare had evolved dramatically since 1914. Planes, once used only for reconnaissance, were now armed fighters, bombers, and strategic assets. This era produced legendary pilots, or aces, who became national heroes. None were more famous than Germany's Manfred von Richthofen. The Red Baron, Leading his flying circus, he was a master tactician and the war's deadliest ace, credited with 80 aerial victories. His distinctive red Fokker triplane became a symbol of German aerial prowess. The skies were a deadly theater of duels and dogfights, as both sides vied for air superiority to control reconnaissance and support their troops on the ground. The Red Baroness' reign came to an end in April 1918 when he was shot down and killed. But the battle for the skies continued with ferocious intensity right up to the war's end. The German spring offensive, despite its initial stunning successes, had a fatal flaw. The German army had outrun its supply lines. The soldiers were exhausted, and they had suffered immense casualties. They had pushed the Allies to the brink, but they couldn't break them. By July, the offensive had ground to a halt. The German gamble had failed. And now, the Allies, reinforced by a steady stream of fresh, eager American troops, were ready to strike back. On August 8, 1918, the Allies launched a massive counterattack at the Battle of Amiens. This marked the beginning of what would become known as the 100 Days Offensive, the final, decisive campaign of the war. Using tanks, aircraft, and coordinated infantry assaults, the Allies shattered the German lines. General Ludendorff famously called it the Black Day of the German Army. From that point on, the Germans were in constant retreat. The Allies relentlessly pushed them back across the territory they had gained in the spring. The Hindenburg Line, Germany's formidable defensive system, was breached in September. The German army, crippled by losses, desertions, and dwindling supplies, began to collapse. The military collapse on the Western Front was mirrored by a political collapse within the Central Powers. Bulgaria was the first to fall, signing an armistice in September. In late October, the Ottoman Empire, battered by British and Arab forces, surrendered. The Austro-Hungarian Empire, a patchwork of restive nationalities, disintegrated as various ethnic groups declared their independence. The empire officially dissolved in early November. Back in Germany, the situation was desperate. People were starving due to the Allied naval blockade, and the news from the front was disastrous. Sailors in the German Navy mutinied, sparking uprisings across the country. The Kaiser was forced to abdicate and fled to the Netherlands. A new republic was declared. With its allies gone, and its army and nation in a state of collapse, the new German government had no choice but to sue for peace. On the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month of 1918, an armistice was signed in a railway carriage in the forest of Compiègne, France. The guns on the Western Front finally fell silent. After 4 long, brutal years and millions of lives lost, the Great War was over. The world had been irrevocably changed, and the difficult, contentious process of building a new peace was about to begin. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this journey through the final years of World War I interesting, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history. Let me know in the comments what piece of history you'd like to explore next. Till then, stay curious.